is a strange, I don't know what you call it exactly, anomaly, light anomaly, a star anomaly. And apparently the closer you get to Jove space, the better you can see it.
It has been nicknamed Caroline's Star.
Whatever happened there, it's massive.
What caused that whole thing to happen?
Jovian stargates have gone offline.
The circadian sleepers have also been appearing.
All those things have been scanning everything that comes near them.
The unidentified structures that have been popping up and disappearing.
They are listening to you.
Preparing to explore, preparing for war.
Is it possible that the sleepers have found a way to break away from the construct?
There's no telling what they might do out of self-defense. Maybe the sleepers are the ones needing the body parts so that they can reconstruct bodies, because their actual bodies have withered away.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Hydrostatic Lore Panel, Entosis Edition. I am your host, Ashtarothi, and I am joined, as always, by the illustrious Lockfox and Fyridian. And tonight we have assembled for you some of the greatest minds in EVE Online lore. And man, that expression has really taken on a lot of new meaning since the first time I said it for the first lore panel. What was it, like 5 months ago? 4 months ago? A lot of stuff has happened, and the lore has become a really big deal, and we are very excited to talk about it. And for tonight, we have overloaded our panel with very, very smart people. So, Phi, if you would, please introduce us to our lore panel.
So we have 9 people on the panel tonight. We have Mark726, also known as Web Spaceships. He's the author of EVE Travel and the EVE Lore Survival Guide. He's also well known for his excellent presentation at EVE Vegas 2013 on the state of the lore, and you are probably sick of hearing about him by now, and that probably goes for a lot of them. We also have Ravis, who is at Eve Ravis, Eve_Ravis on Twitter. He writes Lore Tinfoil Hattery and Eve Fiction at interstellarprivateer.wordpress.com, and he's a pilot with the Wormhole Alliance Sleeper Social Club. We also have with us Morwen Lagan, at Morwen Lagan on Twitter. He's a lore generalist, an Erek Jalan archivist, an organizer of some past Salen conferences, and a moderator for a number of venues for EVE Online's RP community, including the Backstage OOC forums. We have Tarek Rimo, at Camor Rimo on Twitter. He is the main lore geek at Crossing Zebras. He has recently written a piece about drifter theories that follows on the heels of Caldari, Galente, and Jove history summaries. We have Anslo of the Scope, at Anslo Scope on Twitter. He's the CEO of Scopeworks, an ancient race lore enthusiast, and a notable bad poster. We have with us Uriel Antiovnucci, at Antiovnucci on Twitter, and good luck spelling that. He's an avid fan of Eve's lore and backstory, mainly enjoying anything to do with the Jovians, and he's a member of the corporation Jovian Labs. And our new panelists this time are Makoto Priano, at Makoto Priano on Twitter. He's the CEO of a newly founded exploration corporation, a longtime member of the role-playing community, a noted Antikythera element researcher, and a Tweetfleet Slack lore channel regular. Also, his corporation, IKAME, is recruiting, and he was one of the best-dressed people at FanFest. We have Adra Lefisk, whose specialties are I'm sorry, if it has to do with the way people live on a daily basis in New Eden, baseliner or capsuleer alike, today or in the past, that's what's most likely to catch Adra's attention. And we have Juliana Soter, the CEO of Moira Corporation, founded 5 years ago to support the Galente Militia. He's currently executor of Valor Accords, a Galente Militia alliance, and he's participated in the major live events surrounding the first Sancha incursions, the discussions about wormhole space, and he's a participant in Eric Jalon.
Thank you very much. So during that process, you mentioned the Salen conferences, and Julianus, before the show, you said that you participated in some of the Salen conferences. Before we go into anything else, does either of you want to briefly explain what the Salen conferences are? I don't think that we've actually explained that in the past.
So I'm Julianus Sitter, and Morin Lagan actually was one of the other major proponents of the Salen conferences. It is basically a role-playing event coordinated by EVE Online players to tell a lot of the interesting details and discuss a lot of the interesting details behind wormhole space and the sleeper civilization, along with the Talican and other interesting things related to that. We organized that about, 5 years ago? Something like that.
5.5.
Yeah. And it struck off as an interesting hit. There was sort of like 80 people showed up in a chat channel. We had a schedule. We had appointed speakers. People gave speeches. They had PDF documents that had compiled research, that kind of thing.
Very
so
cool.
Fun. Yeah.
Morwen, do you have anything to contribute to that?
Well, we actually just concluded the fourth one about a month or so before FanFest, so we were quite amused to find out that they were effectively formatting FanFest as just an even bigger version of SACON.
I like it. All right, so let's move on to why we're all here, which is the current events or the what's going on in the lore. Because of the fact that we have so many panelists, we're going to have to be a little bit more controlled, and so we've got a system in the background that will hopefully work to make it so that we're not all stepping on each other. But we'll see, and we'll bear with each other, and hopefully it ends up working out all right. So since the last panel, a few things have happened. Just to put things into perspective for everybody, because this had to be put into perspective for me. The last time that we had a lore panel, the Drifters were not on Tranquility. So that means that a lot has happened in the last, month or two since the last lore panel. This also means that all of the events at FanFest and everything like that. So let's just jump right into it. So since the lore panel, the observatories have decloaked. We have now seen the Drifter battleships in space. Does anybody want to basically kind of go over the behavior of those two things? All right, good. Mark, why don't you talk a little bit about the Drifters and observatories and what they've been up to?
Well, the big thing that I've been paying attention to lately, obviously, from my end, has been the evolution of what started off as these partially decloaking, unidentified structures that you could barely make, that you could only kind of make out a general shape for originally. By the time we had the last lore panel, I believe they had fully decloaked, but nothing else had really been going on with them yet. The little that we knew was that they were probably Jovan origin, but we didn't really know much more than that. At this point, what we do know is that they are in fact Jovan origin. We don't know how long they've been there, but we also know that both the Circadian Seekers and the Drifters have started attacking it. Have started attacking these various Jove observatories throughout the cluster for various unknown purposes, probably to go after these Antikythera elements that have popped up already in this discussion, but have they seem to be searching for something in these observatories with fairly pinpoint precision, looking for and attacking, I think it's 3 different areas on the observatory that they seem to be focusing on. First with cutting beams and then tractoring something out. And the fact that these Antikythera elements only appear after a seeker or a drifter has raided one of these Jovian observatories seems to suggest that the elements are what they're after.
Very cool. Okay, so that's what's going on with the observatories. Makoto's correct, right?
Makoto, and no worries.
Makoto, go ahead and tell us a little bit more about the drifters.
So the drifters initially appeared following the Seekers, and they appeared from wormholes in any system with a Jove observatory. Though initially we didn't know that they were in fact Jove. Initially they weren't terribly aggressive unless you approached a wormhole. At the point that the observatories were cracked open, though, they also started aggressing against anyone that approached the observatory as well. Notably, the drifters' behavior has been changing as players find new ways to engage them. One of the earliest ways of attacking a drifter was found by Siniel, and he used a Cerberus to attack them from, I believe, over 200 kilometers away. Within several weeks, the drifters started using their Doomsday from over 400 kilometers. Another change was actually identified by Anslow. Initially, drifters wouldn't attack a ship that lit a sinusoidal field, and then several days later, they would immediately attack any sino that went up on their grid.
Very interesting. So basically, there's these battleships that are going around, and they, basically, if you don't know about the drifter battleships at this point, you should probably do some reading because they might mess you up.
Oh yeah, and it stands to note that they're fast, they're blappy, and when you drop the outer layer of shields they have, because they have two, which is funky, they will doomsday you with something to the effect of 750,000 EHP worth of damage in a single blap.
Yeah, in the last episode, or in the last lore panel, sometime around then, we were discussing their weapon systems and what it might mean, and it basically became the most feared kind of answer, which is that they blow us up with it.
Lance of Light.
That is correct. Okay, so very cool. Thank you very much. Next, also, as you were pointing out, that the observatories started to quote unquote fall apart. However, we had a scope video that confirmed that it was in fact being dismantled by the drifters and the seekers, as Mark pointed out earlier. Okay, so let's go a little bit more into this Antikythera element. Do we know anything about this stuff?
Yes, sort of. The brief version of this is that they're part of some greater structure, and they resonate with some sort of energy. Also, the specific reference is to a mechanism that was discovered off the coast of a Mediterranean island.
Julianus says that he's got more information about kind of the history of the word, at least. So what you got, Julianus?
So interesting point is that it doesn't make too much sense for there to be the word Antikythera inside the back history of the EVE Online universe, though possibly the Galentians know something about it from their Greek cultural tradition. But Antikythera was the name of an island off the southern coast of Greece. A device that was used to plot the movements of the planets and stars was discovered off of this from a shipwreck. BBC has a lovely hour-long presentation. You can watch that on youtube.com. But it's safe to say that it's a mysterious piece of technology that has unusual properties that should be beyond the capabilities of the race or culture that produced it.
So is that the same Greek island that Thera? I mean, is Thera just a shortening of Antikythera?
It's a similar Greek root, but it's a different island physically.
Okay. So we're seeing a pattern in the naming the mysterious names that are coming up.
Greek culturally, yeah. Exactly. Apollos Tyrannus is also a Greek word meaning, the god of tyranny or whatever. So something like that.
Strategos means general in Greek.
Mm-hmm. Apparently, the Jovians are fans of Greek history.
So I know that there's at least one member of this panel that has made it a point to analyze every single name that gets added to Eve. So Ravis, why don't you tell us what you have to say about it?
Sure. So it's not. I think we've covered pretty much of it, but one thing to kind of call out is when you watch some of the stuff on the Antikythera mechanism that they found off the Greek Isle. One of the things that they've kind of put back together for a long time, they didn't know what it was, and they sort of reversed engineer out all these gears, and they've kind of come to the conclusion that it was probably used as an astrological kind of capability. So what they did is they built this mechanism that could tell them where the stars were and what what it meant for what they were seeing. Now, the interesting thing is, of course, at that particular era, it wasn't terribly accurate. It was from what they can tell, it actually didn't track all that well and had to be reset fairly often. But it was used for astrological capabilities. They also think it might have had some use in navigation, but I don't know, Soder, if you heard more in that show that you saw.
Well, basically, it was able to predict the events of eclipses. Was the key topic. It was able to predict when eclipse would occur, and it would also predict several other phenomena such as conjunctions of planets. Things like that. So yes, it was astrological, but it also had this incredible ability to predict in the future when a solar eclipse would occur, which was sort of impossible otherwise. They were able to figure out the rotation of the moon's orbit, how often the moon's orbit would intersect the sun, that kind of thing. So it's basically an ancient computer that was designed at a time when you could basically be guaranteed to have like 5% literacy in the country.
Right, so it could predict some things very accurately, but there were other things that, like the cycles of the planets, that it wasn't so good at, because of course they didn't really understand elliptical orbits, and they really didn't understand the level of impact of that on retrograde motion and things like that.
Unfortunately, they didn't have Kepler back then, so yeah.
Right.
That's all I have so far.
That's very cool, and Ravis, you can, I'm guessing, clearly verify that CCP has been known to leave weird little secrets and hints and subtle references within the naming structure of a lot of things. You've written at great lengths about the names of like the Stratios and the Asteros and a lot of these things that are kind of piecing together.
Well, the key to the whole thing, if you go back far enough, is and it's really not even that far back anymore, but CCP Abraxas, who really kind of built a lot of the foundation of some of the things that you're seeing now, and he's not, I believe he's on leave of absence at the moment.
No, he actually left while we were there for FanFest. Yeah.
Oh, he did. Okay, so he built a lot of it, and he was a really big fan of the Odyssey and the Iliad, and built a lot of things with those sorts of references built into them. So especially when you see Galente names, and now the names that they're coming out with around some of the drifters and some of the things that you see with Greco-Roman kind of ties back to them, a lot of these things have references to the Iliad or the Odyssey. And now I'm starting to see even references that may tie back to things that are from either that period of history, or may tie back even to plays and things like that were done. I did a search the other day on Tyrannos and Apollo and Artemis, and the top listing there is Oedipus Rex, which I'm not sure if exactly what CCP is trying to tell us from that, but I can think of several things that may or may not be very flattering.
All right. Okay, so next is the wormholes. So basically these drifters appear to be coming in and out of the system through a series of wormholes. However, unlike the unstable wormholes that we are used to experiencing, they seem to have stable wormholes. So go ahead, Anslo. You've been paying pretty close attention to these wormholes, right?
Well, when they first showed up, weren't really entirely sure what we were supposed to do with them or how they really worked. I mean, a lot of people, like right after downtime when they showed up, just set cloaky eyes on them, watched what they did, and we saw like Seekers coming around, and then we started seeing Drifter battleships show up, and then something really weird happened. We actually saw Drifter battleships start going through them, jumping through them, and we were like, wow, that's really cool. And when we looked at the wormhole closer, we were like, wow, it looks a lot like they're in there. Let's go ahead and try to get in there. They tried, multiple people tried, and they just died in a horrible fire. So basically the issue is that if you get within a certain range of the wormholes, you will be aggressed by everything in that area, no questions asked. Doesn't matter who you are, what your standings are, you'll get aggressed and you will die horribly. The interesting thing, at least that I know, and other people have seen things differently than I have, like in terms of how the aggression works, but at least the way that I have observed it, the closer you get to one of the Jove observatories, you can be like, right in its face. You won't get attacked by a drifter or anything. At least not me or my other, guys or girls. But if you get within a certain range of one of these wormholes, you will be attacked and you will be killed quickly.
All right, so basically there's these stabilized wormholes. They're going in and out of them, and they aggress anybody who gets nearby.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, but no idea where they go, why they're, how they move, why they appear, what that criteria is. But the one interesting thing is that they, even though it looks like that they're Thera, through the other side of the hole, people who are in Thera have not reported anything weird. Furthermore, these wormholes are the only wormholes that have very specific sleeper structures. I think it's the multiplex forwarders that are near them that apparently stabilize them. Maybe we don't know, but they're unique to those specific kind of wormholes.
Can I speak up?
Yep, I was about to hand it over to you, Mark.
Just to clarify a little bit, we have seen these multiplex forwarders and thermoelectric converters, not in this configuration, not associated with wormholes, but they're fairly common, if I'm not mistaken, in regular wormhole sites. They seem to be more related to data transfer and stuff like that, not necessarily wormhole stabilization. So I'm not really sure that those are stabilizing structures so much as some sort of communication structures, how I've always been reading it.
Okay, very cool.
Sino or jump bridge, you mean?
More like communication between whatever's on the other side of it. Maybe some way to transfer the data that they've been collecting back through the wormhole to whatever's on the other side.
Could it possibly be that they're using these systems to suppress the cloaking fields that were around the Jove structures?
That's entirely possible, but the fact that we have Jove structures decloaking in areas that we haven't seen unidentified wormholes or don't currently see unidentified wormholes, I just don't know yet.
Okay, that makes sense. Tarek, you said you wanted to have something else. Was that what you wanted to contribute, or you got something else?
Yes. Just a quick remark about the theory that the wormholes might lead to Thera itself. I am unfortunately too bad to remember the guy's name, but there was a guy who did some YouTube videos on tracking the drifters, and he actually placed an alt in Thera at as many wormholes as he could, or several alts, and then watched the drifter go through the wormhole, and he could not spot anything in the other side. So it is, at least in game mechanics, it is 100%, 90%, 80%, something like that, that they really don't lead to Thera, but probably somewhere close to.
Right. So if there was another wormhole system that was near Thera but not Thera, just like, now you can jump between systems and the nebula stays the same until you go to a new region. So there could theoretically be another wormhole space or another solar system in that area that is within the quote unquote the same region as Thera, but not being Thera itself.
Exactly. Sorry.
I was just going to say, which would kind of make sense, because if the Sisters of Eve were observing something, that could be what they were observing.
Potentially, or some connections got opened between certain wormholes, like now we have shattered systems, before we had C1, C2, and so on and so forth. They have static connections to each other, and sometimes random connections, but not all of them are connected to each other in the same way, and so we could be seeing something similar to that.
Right. Okay. So, Fi, you've got something to bring up from Twitch chat.
Yeah, so Entari in the Twitch chat is asking whether anybody has tried role-playing sending a camera beacon through one of the drifter wormholes, which we know worked in one of the events where one of the Sancha incursion events where they sent a camera back into one of the Sancha wormholes and found a Jove station there.
Has anybody tried that yet? Does anybody know of anybody who's tried such a thing?
Like Makoto just said in Slack, it's kind of pointless without an event actor present or watching to respond to it, because otherwise you can just RP at it in local and nothing will happen.
From my understanding, the one that happened in the Sancha event was just a post that was like, I sent this through, and they were like, okay, here's the image. Like, did they actually have an actor on grid with them when they did that?
Yes, it was in the middle of an event.
Fair enough. Okay, well, there you go then. I guess the short answer is I'm not aware of anybody who has done a non-mechanical examination of the wormhole, like a lore-based thing. So get on it. Maybe CCP will do it for you. Anywho, Uriel, you've been waiting patiently. What you got?
Yeah, you guys kind of already went through a lot of what I was going to say. Wormholes, the systems do indeed have constellations and regions of their own, so I was just going to say the same thing about Thera, about how it doesn't at all have to be in Thera, wherever the wormholes come out, but it's definitely somewhere near it, if that is indeed the same nebula. And also, on the observatories decloaking, well, they were decloaking long before the wormholes started appearing. Just to add to that, I don't think the wormholes or anything with them are causing the decloak, because, well, it feels a lot more like Caroline's star is the cause of that.
That is an excellent point. Thank you. Okay, so let's see. We talked about the drifter aggression patterns changing. I have written here that there's unconfirmed reports of drifters aggressing Concord vessels. Does anybody know anything about that? Makoto, go ahead.
So the brief version of that is someone had posted pictures of drifters or seekers scanning Concord vessels. To my understanding, seekers will scan anything in their vicinity, but NPCs at this point don't actually aggress anything that's another NPC. So unfortunately, there hasn't actually been aggression that people have seen, though there was mention of a Minmatar expedition near Aram that did engage the drifters and were forced to retreat. So it does happen off screen.
Go ahead, Tarek.
Yeah, I just wanted to add just a sentence. The one thing that is interesting with the combination of drifters and seekers now on Tranquility together is that they do look like they're cooperating. They're working together on, we have seen that in videos. The drifters break open the structures. The seekers seem to extract stuff. Sometimes the seekers have the antikythera element if they die. Sometimes the drifters have. They both also turn up next to the wormholes, and then in the trailer you have that scene where it looks like the seekers are flying into wormhole space, bringing the collected corpses or whatever else they collect there.
Right. In the trailer that we saw, we definitely saw a seeker pull something out of a Jove observatory, navigate a wormhole, and then go to wormhole space. Although it is worth noting that in the video, they're actually pulling the body out of the sleeper conclave, which is in the wormhole space. Like, that was a pretty common misconception from people in the early, when that trailer first came out, where they thought that they were putting a body from the Jove observatory into the construct pod, but that actually isn't the case. They're pulling a body out of the construct pod, and they appear to have brought it somewhere else. presumably the very large structure behind the conclave.
Yeah, but before we get to that, they also are seen sort of like salvaging from the breaches of the observatories, which the drifters cut in there, and then the seekers come and take stuff out of there.
Right. And I actually have a totally side question, because you said something that was sort of interesting, which is that NPCs don't aggress each other. And I guess I just never realized that. Like, is that true? Like, is there no mechanic in Eve that allows an NPC to shoot at another NPC?
Correct.
Yeah, that's correct. Right now, NPCs don't actually fight one another. There are a number of missions and PvE examples where you see quote unquote fights between groups of NPCs, but what those really are just a bunch of scripted explosion events where a rat is replaced with a wreck, or they just tell it to explode. They do not actually exchange gunfire or any kind of weapons fire at all. That might be possible now with the Drifter AI, but that's still just the Drifters. The rest of the NPCs in the game, maybe except for the Seekers, don't have any way to do that yet. So, like, they basically can't respond, as far as we know.
Okay. And the only other thing I want to add to that is that it's worth noting that they did mention that the Drifters and the Seekers operate on a new AI, which is supposed to be more fleet oriented and almost maybe not emergent, but definitely more advanced in kind of the tactics and the way things go. And the one thing that I did note from the FanFest discussions was that they admitted to the fact that they don't actually know 100% what's going to happen with these AI strategies, because it's very reactive. And it's very possible, especially given the reports that we've heard earlier in this from you guys, that they are actually changing it in the background to adapt. But it may just be the program working. Who knows? All right. So next, so these drifters are doing a lot of damage. They dispatched a lot of capsuleer ships, including capital ships and sub-capital ships. The capital ships are still one-shotted by that super weapon, correct?
No.
Sub-capitals are.
Okay, so how has the capitals been taken out?
Because they don't know how to fit capitals. The first one that was taken out, they just went all gank, no tech. They didn't have any kind of hardeners. They didn't have anything prepared. It was just all DPS. And they were doing fine for like the general DPS and just hitting the thing, and everything was all well and good. But that Doomsday, if you don't tank, you're done. Like Snuffbox or Snuffed Out a couple weeks ago, they ran into a drifter and they thought, okay, we'll just gank this thing with a couple of attack battle cruisers. And they tried, and one of those drifter battleships took out about 780 million worth of their ships. So that same night, we were like, okay, let's test this out. So Overload Everything decided to just drop as many big things as we could, and I kept repeating to people, make sure you tank, or you're going to die. So we go in, we felt pretty confident, we had enough slow cats and supers and dropped on it, had it tackled, and that's where we found out, oh hey, they actually are now aggressing Sinos, which is, it never happened before. So as soon as we lit the Sino and we all jump in before we could even lock up and aggress, the Sino dies. So that was a little weird. So we're aggressing it, the shield goes down, the ECM burst, whatever it is, goes off, and we all lose target. And what was on TeamSpeak a whole lot of conversation suddenly stopped as we saw this thing hit an Archon. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, oh crap, what if they upgraded this thing? We might just lose an Archon. Luckily we didn't, we killed it. But yeah, they're adapting every day. I guess it has to do with that those silent updates that they were talking about during FanFest, but their behavior is changing. So if you take one on with a capital ship, make sure it's tanked. Otherwise you will regret it with, well, losing your ship.
All right, and Makoto, you have something else to throw in there?
It's been covered, actually.
All right, well, then the next and final thing that I have in kind of the overview of what's been going on is our dear Empress has had her health somewhat questioned. Fi, do you want to talk about that?
Probably somebody else should, because all I know is that her health is failing.
Does anybody know anything more than that, or is that basically all we know?
Only more details.
The only thing we've really heard was about the launch of a Imperial issue of Baden. There was a news article about a month before FanFest saying that this was going to happen, but that the Empress was likely not to be present because she hadn't been seen in public for a while, citing, I believe, health issues. That's literally the last we've heard on it, because most of the news of late has either been stuff from the now very active ISD guys, the Interstellar Correspondence, or stuff relating to the Drifters and that storyline.
It is worth noting that wherever there are sleepers, the Amar Empress is probably pretty important. So I'm sure it's not the last we've heard about her.
I'm actually somewhat surprised that nothing came out of that launch, since that ship launch actually happened during FanFest on the timeline.
Yeah. Very interesting. It's possible that the Amar Empire decided to squirrel that one away. Okay, so on to new business. Okay, so in the trailer, the Emergence Threats trailer, which we showed at the top of the hour, I'm pretty sure, we saw a new piece of the puzzle, which is that the Drifters and the Seekers are recovering bodies, and it appears to be that they're kind of recovering potentially 3 different kinds of bodies. Sleeper bodies from the Conclave, potentially Jove bodies from the observatory, although I don't think we've actually ever observed, strictly speaking, a Jovian body being recovered from the observatory. But also, and kind of most terrifying, they have been taking our corpses as well. Uriel, you've got something to say.
Yeah, I don't know. I only wanted to say, just to clarify, in Templar 1, we are told that the Sleepers and Jove are biologically, well, I mean, the same genetically, but the Sleepers and Jove use very, very different implants, and that the Sleepers have their construct implants and maybe a whole slew of other stuff, but the Jove use different things. I just wanted to add that in.
Yeah, the Jove, there's the statics and the modifiers, and the statics don't even believe in any implants, right? Or am I just crazy?
The Unsullied don't.
Nah, yeah. Let's see. The statics are the ones that are against doing any more genetic modification. The modifiers, lore-wise, do believe in doing that because they're trying to fix the Jovian disease through genetic modification. And that's about it for that, yeah.
Right. Anslo, you've got something to throw in too.
I'm sorry, Uriel. I mean, you already know. I disagree. They're not. I mean, personally, I don't think that Sleepers and Joves are the same thing. I mean, when you go to look in the book, they originated from similar backgrounds, but what we have now, they're not the same thing at all. Like, when you read about how the Sleepers exist, what their construct is like, versus what the Jove are like, it's just 2 very different animals. In terms of physiology, I think what you were saying with the implants, sleeper implants, or sleeper implants, occupy a part of the brain that, as everyone knows, the pod implants occupy. It interacts completely differently. The actual physical bodies of the sleepers, the way that they've been preserved, versus the genetic modification that the Jove are constantly going through for these, past couple hundred, if not thousands of years. It's just, they've gone down 2 different paths. I don't think they're really the same, species at all anymore. I mean, there might be some similarities, but I don't think we can say that they're the same. But that's just me.
Right.
Yeah, so, I just wanted to... Is it okay if I say anything
go
else
for it.
there? Okay. Yeah, Enslo, makes a really good point there. He's probably right about it. The only thing I remember really that I want to keep in there is that it's mentioned that the Jove and the Sleepers, well, I mean, at least at one point, yeah, like he was saying, they diverged a long time ago. At least both have been modified to naturally have a cavity in the some place in the brain. Not necessarily where the, well, actually, no. It does say that's originally where the sleeper implant is, but I'm not really sure how this goes along with everything else because, and then we also hear Grius say, you know, Grius is the Jovian from all the Tony G stuff. Talks about, I think it's in Empyrean Age, no, it's Templar 1, where he says that instead of the construct implant that the sleepers would have in whatever this space is, the Jove have, oh no, this is actually in Theodicy, strike that, that the Jove, well, the Director of Jove have these communications devices in their heads, more like quantum entangled communications. So basically, they don't need to go through any fluid routers or anything. It's just direct communication between all of them. I just wanted to add that in.
I appreciate it. Makoto, you wanted to throw something in there.
So I can't recall if it's one of the Chronicles or Templar 1. The Amar are boarding a sleeper enclave to recover implants for their dust soldiers. And they go something to the effect of, "Oh God, it's a Jove," when they're recovering corpses and implants. Clearly, the sleeper and the Jove at this point, there's probably speciation because if there's sufficient genetic modification, they probably can't interbreed, but they still originate with the same stock. They probably diverged markedly at about the time of the Second Empire Jove, and so if you want to use a sort of looser term of Jove, then they're derived from the same stock, even if Third Empire, Directorate Jove, and Sleeper are now different.
Right. I think it's, we can all agree that Jove and Sleepers share a common ancestor, but I think at this point it's difficult to say how much they are compatible or the same, even looking the same, right?
Is it okay if I say something?
Yeah, go for it.
In Templar 1, I was just saying I remember the Amar people who go into this enclave to check that out in the first place and take the implants. They are attacked by what appears to be a Jovian, and I guess that was a sleeper or at least someone guarding it. But they said it at least looked a lot, exactly like a Jovian. So, yeah.
Right, and the body that we see being pulled out of the sleeper conclave in the video, it is for all intents and purposes visually Jovian. Okay, so also, I guess, Ravis, you've got something to throw in about statics?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of tie back to the question that you were asking a little bit earlier. The statics really are three different groups, and the first one being the elders, who were one of the first, based on what I read in Eve Source. They're really the first largely genetically modified groups, and their primary modification was to make them live longer. They didn't go a whole lot beyond that. The second group is a group called the Unsullied, who had more or less decided that they were done with genetic modification, and so they focused heavily on cybernetics, which I think ties very interestingly into this whole discussion as well. So they said, we're done with all the genetic modification. We're going to be focusing instead on cybernetics and things like that. And then the third one is the stasis people, who theoretically tied back into the sleepers. Certainly they were focused heavily on cryostasis and virtual environments, so it makes some sense. And those three groups made up the statics section. I'll let Uriel talk a little bit more about the modifiers, because that ties back into some other theories that he's got as well.
Yeah, I was just going to say, also about the stasis people, just a quick little point on them. In Source, it also says something about, it mentions something about them not wanting the Jove to, let's say, change much anymore, that their society is something along the lines of already having been good, and it's not really implied in it. I mean, it is kind of implied, that's what I'm trying to say, that they, at least before the wormholes opened again, they at least knew something about where the sleepers had gone, because they basically exist as, well, I mean, even with their description, something kind of similar to them, preferring, cryostasis and things like that. It says that in their old description, at least. And you were going to say about the modifiers, I guess?
Yeah, since I'm assuming you're going to tie back into some of that, although I don't know if we want to wait until later on that, or if you want to dive into some of the theories that Uriel's got now.
No. Go ahead and just take a couple of seconds and kind of. We've talked about the Jove quite a bit, but obviously they are becoming more and more of an important character. So if you want to briefly kind of go into the Jove and these different factions, have at it, Uriel.
Let's see. Well, can I start with just saying a little bit of their history, like a real brief overview on that?
That sounds fantastic.
All right. So, okay, the Jove originally, at the time the Eve Gate closed, there was a group of people called the Architects, who had only recently come through and were the least advanced technologically of any of the people who had come through Eve as it closed. And they had a bunch of these gigantic colony ships, which is that's what it's mentioned in Templar 1. I gotta say, anyone who's listening to this, you should really read that. It has a lot of information on it. These colony ships had very, very low power warp drives and weren't even powered for most of the way, so they moved basically from Genesis over to Curse, and it took them a very long time. So the Architects were asleep in their, not very advanced virtual world at that point, and the ones who watched them and made sure they made it there safely came to be known as the Enhedwani, which are, as we know, kind of a... You know what? Let's explain that later. They're difficult, because that's mentioned a lot in Theodicy too. They basically watch things, influence a lot of things behind the scenes. There's a lot to go over with them, and honestly, it'll take up a lot of time here if I try to say it right now. So, on to the First Empire. The First Empire, basically, it was all set up in heaven, the constellation, where the Angel Cartel is now based out of, where every single one of the construct ships, the colony ships made it safely, and they set up their empire and started. Now they were doing their genetic engineering basically from this time onwards and started, bettering themselves and whatnot. It all worked out. It's not really fleshed out, but it says that in source that it all worked for a very long time until the elders, which were mentioned earlier, began trying to hold back that creativity the Jove had. They were, first of all, think of them as like old men in government. That's essentially what they were, because they had made themselves live a very long time, and they were in charge of things and really screwed a lot of things up. They basically caused the collapse of the First Empire, and everything started falling apart. That is until the Second Empire, which is extremely important in the rest of this. I'm going to talk about someone named Miko Bor, who was the leader of the Second Jove Empire, or at least the first one. His faction, which was called the Tyrants, which I will mention later, brought together all of the scattered Jove who were really very, very eager to join back and get back together with the Empire. However, the ones who weren't willing to get back together with him were dealt with. He was a very kind of militant. Think more of a actually a lot of like ancient Greek or Roman, I'm not sure which one it was, where they would basically say to an enemy, you can join us and you can live as you were, or you can not join us and we'll just destroy you. So a lot of the Jove got back together that way, basically. And the Tyrants created a very, very stable form of government. They created a federation with basically a lot of democracy. It was a stable system. And the office of tyrant became an elected position within that. And this all lasted around 3,000 years until, and it would have been stable for even longer had it not been for the Jovian disease coming around and basically wrecking everything. When that came around, the sleepers, by this time, who were known more as themselves, like would be like how we know them now, had already retreated into their now very, very advanced VR world. They could even achieve time dilation inside this world and basically became much more advanced than what the Jove had at the time. A lot of the Jove, including Grius, he suggests, but doesn't say that it's true, that the sleepers may have been the ones who caused the Jovian disease. And while they did deny it, which might actually serve to prove a really good point, the Jove ended up chasing them, and the sleepers eventually, quote unquote, escaped to a place we couldn't follow, which we all know to be, wormhole space. Now after this, the Jove began falling apart again, and it's said that they went through a technological regression, meaning that there could be potentially a lot of stuff from the Second Empire they actually lost, and that we would not have seen ever since, technologically. Now after that, they ended up, the scattered remains of them, whoever was surviving the disease and had managed to survive for a while, they all got back together, they vacated the Heaven constellation, and moved to the regions we now know them to reside in. Now I gotta say one last thing, the Tyrants, Nico Bohr's faction, loses all mention at the end of the Second Empire. They aren't mentioned ever again. It doesn't say what happened to them, and we basically don't know anything else about what happened. So that goes into a lot of the theory I'll bring up later. Now the Third Jovian Empire is the one we have now, and they're basically composed of, they're a lot smaller than the First and Second Empires, and they're composed of the Modifiers, the Statics, and let's see, there's the Stasis people. Then there's another group called the Lab Rats, which I forget who had a really good point on that to bring up. I don't remember the point perfectly well myself. Something about their actual name, if someone wants to bring that up. So basically, that's all I have for now.
Ravis, you sound like you had something.
Yeah, it was
it was
me.
you,
The question is, I got to remember exactly what it was that I was arguing that night. It was one of my straw men.
Yeah, that's right. Pokemon or something. That was the name, right?
Yeah, I think so. So essentially, if I recall correctly, it was something that tied back to, if you actually looked at the Pokemon. See, what does it say? It says usage that translators could get the closest to was the word apocaminoi, referring to the rather tragic origins of this class as Jovian individuals specifically created for the purpose of scientific research. So essentially what this is a group of Jovians, since Jovians are grown in a lab. They specifically built a set of people with test conditions so that they could see whether or not they could figure out ways to resolve the Jovian disease. So they grew their own lab rats, basically. Effectively. And that's, if I recall correctly, what I was researching that night. It was kind of late. It was that Apocominoid does have something to do with a dark color, and that takes me back to all of the black blood or dark eyes and black veins that you see in the Jovian population as well. So it was a pretty loose set of search connotations, but it was an interesting connection.
All right, very cool. That was a lot of Jove stuff. So let's move on to something similar, but not quite the same. So one of the things that we've kind of discovered was how this lore is going to tie into kind of the future mechanics of the game. Now, in a previous lore panel, I proposed my theory that these lore events are heading towards the player-made stargates and all that kind of stuff. And it's very possible that it still is, but it seems like there's another connection to in-game changes that the lore is tying into, which is that this stuff, the Antikythera element, is going to be utilized to create a new item, which is the Entosis link, which is going to be basically the new sovereignty mechanic. And so it would appear that we are salvaging or resalvaging Jovian tech in order to manage our our new soft warfare. Phi, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about this stuff and maybe let's dig a little bit into what these things might be and why are they called Entosis?
I mean, so we know that that the drifters are going to be dropping components for these links. We know that the empires right now are reverse engineering some of those Antikythera components, or at least the Amar and the Kaldari have admitted to doing so, and the Minmatar and Kaldari have said that that might not be such a good idea. So basically, they're reverse engineering this module out of Drifter and or Jove technology. We know that it uses the same effect that you see coming off of the circadian sleeper or circadian seekers who are scanning things, and we know that basically it's a non-violent way of making structures change allegiance.
All right. Yes. Thank you. Okay. So, Makoto, why don't you talk about the requirements for these for this new module?
So there are a couple of interesting things. As mentioned before, Antikythera elements are required in the production of the Tech 1 Entosis link. Interestingly, you also need sleeper encryption for research and invention of the Tech 2 module, which implies that the Antikythera element has some sort of sleeper component, which could either tie in with the enclaves and the construct, or it could just be that this is super advanced tech, which is to say actually that Entosis links are sort of Tech 3 when you get down to it.
Okay, hold on. So, I'm gonna sound like an idiot for a second. Now, I know that there are different types of researching for or in game. There are different skills for researching the different ancient texts. Is there a Jovian research skill?
There is not.
So that could very well explain why it's sleepers, because it can't be Jovian.
Indeed, in which case that itself implies that sleeper technology and Jovian technology are essentially compatible.
Right, which would be very interesting.
Indeed.
Okay, great. And go ahead and tell us a little bit about what's going on with these things, Uriel.
Well, my point on it. So, well, actually, if you want to let Morwen confirm the thing he wants to say first, hold on. I can say everything right after.
You're right. Morwen's gonna rip us apart if we don't let him talk. So go ahead. Morwen.
No, it's just
it's actually important. It'll make sense here if he says it first. So I'd like that.
Yeah. Fozzie actually has confirmed that the visual effect for the Entosis links will be the same effect that you see the Seekers and the Drifters using to scan things. So, whether that means they are using Entosis links and that we may want to pay attention to what they're using them on a lot, or it's derived, or that the Entosis links are derived from not just the Antikythera elements from the observatories, but also salvage Drifter and Seeker tech. You know.
Well, it's also worth noting. It's worth noting that we do not get Antikythera elements from sleepers or drifters that have not fiddled with an observatory, right? So we are not looting their scanner, for example. We are looting something that they are transporting.
If I can get back to my thing now, is it okay?
Yep, go for it.
All right. So, yeah, I was just gonna say, well, first about our using the Entosis links. It's likely, seeing as they were using this effect before they started salvaging from the observatories, that we're using something that's kind of a combination of both the things they know. So that we have their tech, I guess, or something related to it, the blueprint, we're using it somehow. And then the Antikythera element is something we need to make this work. Because it seems like they had it before that. And now to just say, it's a little quick thing. A really, really, really old chronicle that I was noticing a funny little bit of a link to, maybe, called The Repairman. It was written in 2002, so, make of that what you will. In it, a Capsuleer named Case Omnicron is, let's say, something, he's knocked out, basically, by these two strange little ships that are described as having, let's see, like an oily type of texture, really small, and were well, basically a lot like how sleeper ships would be described. And there's two of them, and the pilots, we are told their names are the Hunter and the Healer. I only really took notice of that the first time I did after we saw Apollo and Artemis, because, well, people know Artemis, the name Artemis, the goddess, was a hunter. And Apollo, also in addition to being a sun god, is, well, regarded as something that would heal things. And also, they seem to modify Case Omicron's will, or do something to him with the way the Entosis links is starting to seem. I'm starting to feel like there may be a little more of a link here than I even originally considered. So, even though the drifters themselves are new, I feel like there might have been something to do with them, at least at one point, a very long time ago. And seeing the way CCP does things, or has done things all this time, with things linking to things that have happened a very long time ago, I really wouldn't put it past them at all to make that something that's linked to here.
Have we heard anything from Case Omicron since then?
No, at that time, the game it was in 2002 when they made this, so the game didn't exactly exist yet. Someone did make a character named Case Omicron, but that was in like 2005, and I think they actually just made the character based off that chronicle. So I'm not going to take that pilot as the person, because I highly doubt it is.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and also, I guess, I can't believe we missed that. So one of the things that we did learn about the Drifters is that, they do appear to be Jovish, but also that there only is two of them, correct? The male and the female.
Well, okay. Technically four. We've only been able to see three. There's one with a different name that's probably some sort of placeholder. We have Apollo and Artemis Tyrannos, and then we have Tyrannos Strategos, which, well, Strategos is a general in the ancient Greek military. And also, interestingly, there's a unpublished description, if you can see that on the Shidwald website. I think that's how you pronounce it. Sorry if I'm wrong. That kind of implies that, well, Strategos isn't the one totally in charge. Like, it's a general, meaning, a general. Someone else is the one in charge in the end. And we will save that for the tinfoiling part, I guess. So, yeah.
All right, very cool. So, sorry, there's three Joves, but there's three Drifters, but there is two that basically people are interacting with, which is Apollo and Artemis. Right. And Apollo is the male, Artemis is the female, and you're saying that they could be coy references to the Healer and the Hunter.
Right. And also, if I can just say, I'd almost go so far as to say is that Apollo and Artemis, because these Drifters, well, it's implied that they're not exactly, just totally real people from the beginning. That it might be, maybe even a title, or maybe even just some sort of consciousness being in different places. For all we know, we've seen a lot of weird things about that before, so I can't even say anything on that for now.
And then you said, so just that story that you told about the original Hunter and Healer, when exactly does that take place within the history of the universe? Is that from the Jovian empires?
No, it's let's say the dawn of the Capsuleer Age, because that seems like it, because Case Omicron is said to be a Capsuleer, and he's basically just ratting in that chronicle. And,
so the reason why I ask this in particular is because one of the common theories is that these new Drifters are reawoken, either sleepers or
something even older,
or the other.
Yeah.
But it would be odd that they would pick a cultural reference that happened outside of their world to name themselves. But who knows? They're a wily bunch. Okay, so, but before we move beyond the Entosis link, there is another important piece to it, which is, again, all in its name. So once again, I'm gonna head on over to the name master, Ravis. why don't you tell us a little bit about why the word entosis is so interesting?
Sure. So one of the things, if you've read some of the things that I've written over the last couple of years, that I keep coming back to is all the biological references around wormhole space. If you go back to some of the things that CCP Drop Bear originally sort of gave out as when, probably 2-3 years ago, maybe more, a lot of the conversation revolves around the term anoicus. So the term anoicus is a biological term. It refers to a type of programmed cell death. So, and this isn't necessarily a negative thing. Programmed cell death is something that's actually good. It's something that basically tells old cells to die off and new cells to continue going the way they need to.
It's what stops us from being balls of cancer.
Right. Essentially, it's what stops things from growing the way they're supposed to stop from growing. It's why you don't have a tail. It's it's that kind of thing. So programmed cell death in general is something called apoptosis. So when you look at W space, it is littered with biology references and littered with particularly cellular and subcellular biology references. So when they came out with this new module and called it the Entosis module, the Entosis is another cellular term that is essentially a non-apoptosis type of cell death mechanism and really operates by cells gobbling up other cells rather than throwing them off and kicking them out. So the word entosis itself is a whole different set of references around overtaking things that operates at a biological level.
Right. And again, these all link into all of those other words that you've been tracking on your blog, including again Stratios and even some stuff with Thera and a bunch of these other things have all kind of you've managed to link a lot of them together, and I do appreciate your effort on that.
Sure. And one of the things that I'll actually encourage is that there are a number of very interesting videos out on YouTube. If you get a chance, go out and take a look at some of the videos that actually show apoptosis at work. I did this one night and was throwing tons of stuff out on the lore channel in Slack because I was finding all kinds of really random references that tied back to Eve. In particular, there is something in the apoptosis process called an apoptosome. It is an entity that forms inside your cells as they are spinning up to die in this apoptosis process, and they create a thing called an apoptosome, and that apoptosome looks an amazing amount like the map to wormhole space. So there's all these little Easter eggs all over the place that you find as you dig into these terms.
So hold on. So what you're suggesting is that the entirety of wormhole space, the map of wormhole space, can be mapped to biology?
Yes, it can. So this is and this is again probably a coincidence, but it's awful similar looking. It's not. It looks too close to be coincidence. And when you look at some of the different things that were planned back in the days when wormhole space was originally created, there were definitely some intentional things that were tied back to biology within wormhole space. So we do find that there are a lot of things that connect back there, and even in the new shattered wormholes, one of the most interesting new sites that's been discovered in J000214, I believe, is a sleeper construct that's designed that specifically is connected back to informatics and the study of biology, the sleeper bioinformatics complex. So we're still seeing even more biology references, and you think about the Jove and you think about the Jovian disease. So the reality is you've got all these different things tying into biology, cellular biology, genetic modification that seem to have a missing link, and we haven't quite figured out what that missing link is yet, but it seems tied to this cell death, program cell death, split off, and some of it seems to be like it's allegorical, but some of it might at some level turn out to be literal in some ways. There's been a very interesting thread of discussions that we've had that ties back to, are we metaphorically set up to look like cancer? Are we metaphorically set up to look like lupus? Is this really is the whole metaphor of W space and the Jovian approach and the Jovian life cycle? Is it tied back in some way to echo the immune system? It's there's a whole lot of really strange references that tie back and link together, and there's almost too many of them to be coincidence.
That is crazy. Okay, so that's a lot of information, and it's definitely something that we're probably going to... Makoto, you have something?
Okay,
Makoto?
quickly, I do have to horn in here. One thing is that Entosis, interestingly enough, is actually insertion of one cell into the other. It's not the other cell.
Oh, you're right, I had it the other way.
Yeah,
sorry about that.
Which is an interesting implication for the Entosis link and taking over a structure. I'll leave it there.
Very cool, thank you. So we are actually going to move on to the next area where we're going to talk about the scope videos that's been coming out. Now, the scope videos started coming out before the last panel, I'm pretty sure. Actually, yes, because, well, one of the scope videos featured us, so that was cool. But either way, why don't you go over, or actually, you know what? Locke, if you can go ahead and show one of the scope videos now, we'll take a brief break and watch the scope video, and then we're going to come back and, man, you guys and your names. Adre, right?
Adra?
Adra will go over the different the scope videos.
The mysterious drifters have begun showing a disturbing new behavior, according to reports coming in from across New Eden. It began when, according to eyewitnesses, a rescue pod containing Capsuleer Draven Osron was destroyed and his corpse collected by a drifter ship. There is a rising concern that the drifters are harvesting captured bodies in an attempt to manifest themselves, as some scientists had feared. Furthermore, as this footage from Hakonnen clearly shows, the drifters have started dismantling the Jove observatories. Once detached from the structure, drifters transport the pieces through mysterious wormholes that neither Capsuleer nor Empire ships have thus far been able to enter. Samples of the fragments known as Antikythera have been collected from Drifter Rex, and its characteristics and potential use are currently being investigated. Whatever their ultimate purpose, these new drifter discoveries are raising more questions than they answer. This is Alton Havery reporting on location for the scope.
All right, thanks, Lockfox. Adra, why don't you go ahead and just kind of go over the different scope videos that we've had.
All right, we've had 5 scope videos recently. Hold on a second. These are put together by CCP Loki, who does these on his own time, apparently. We've had the FanFest Emergent Threats video, which featured us, and the Drifter Activity Intensifies video, which came out shortly after that. The Down Revenant, which focused mostly on the Central battleship that went down, and the speculation on the Tukos whereabouts. Jackdaw Testing, which then Soter responded to in the IGS. And then the war erupts in the south.
Very cool, thank you. So basically what these videos have been is a really clear attempt to merge player lore with in-game lore. They have been making a very, very strong attempt to make sure that players are involved. As I mentioned earlier, we were shown in one of the scope videos, as in the lore panelists were shown in one of the scope videos in which we were described as scientists, which I find both flattering and a bit unnerving. But but they've tried, and at least every video they've tried to at least do something, it seems, to kind of play to the player side of the story as well. And the other cool thing that they've been doing is at the bottom of every scope video, there is a ticker, and that ticker, like a news ticker, gives us hints to other things that are going on. So, for example, in the Jackdaw testing video, they mentioned a Serpentis vessel with unknown hull composition and markings towed to Caldari Navy, which might be related to the new burner missions. That's, I think, the assumption. But it's just they've been kind of doing some pretty cool stuff with that. So
the propel dynamics, which was mentioned in that last video, is also one of the logos on the Stratios.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, I saw you posted the link, and so I was trying to figure out why you were doing that, but that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so propel dynamics, it was said propel dynamics declines to comment on the arrival of unidentified vessel to Tamo factory Gravdock, and the Tamo propel was the place that the Serpentis vessel was being towed to in the Jackdaw testing. I'm going to just guess, Ravis, that you can tell us a little, or Adria, do you want to tell us about who Propel is, or I can hand that over to Ravis? I think he's done some research into those people before too.
A little bit. Let's have Adria
dive
into it.
Nah, I think Ravis would be better at it.
So I mean, the main thing about Propel, and I don't know a ton about them. The biggest thing that I looked into was their initial appearance on the Stratios as well. They are one of a number of different groups that appear on the Stratios, but they're the only one who, if I recall correctly, actually appear on both the Stratios and on the Nestor, and potentially, I'm trying to remember if they appear on the Astero as well.
They do show up on the Astero.
But so they're the ones who are primarily behind, particularly the warp drive, the cloaked warp drive of the Sisters of Eve ships. So they're definitely intimately tied into the events that are going on. So the fact that they're showing up here again is just another tie back into the same main story structure.
It is worth noting that there is no reason to believe that this Serpentis vessel is directly related to the Jovians or the Antikythera or any of this stuff. This seems to be a separate thread at this time. Okay, so anybody have anything else about the various scope videos that have been coming out? I know that... I do want to point out that, as Adria said, these are basically complete works of love by CCP Loki. I don't know whether or not he does it on his own time. That might be, but I know that he's basically the main guy who does all of them by himself.
We love you, Loki.
And oh my God, CCP Loki, you are one of the coolest people.
Confirmed.
Thank you, Loki.
For those of you who do not know, CCP Loki is the lead for the video team. So as I was commenting beforehand, like, CCP owes a lot to that dude. He's, because he had his fingers in all these scope videos. I mean, he did all the scope videos. He had his fingers in the This Is Eve trailer. He's doing great things for all of us. So thank you very much. And it is worth noting that he is also looking for more Bob lore. I'm assuming that's Bob the deity, not Bob the ancient organization that was dismantled by Goonswarm.
Yeah, the deity. The wormhole deity.
Right. So if you know any information that is semi-canon about Bob, Loki is interested in talking to you.
And we should also give a huge shout out to CCP Falcon and his team and CCP Affinity and her team, because I know that they've been feeding a lot of this information to CCP Loki's team. And if you want to hear more from CCP Falcon and CCP Affinity, they will be on the show, which is recording this Sunday.
Oh, snap. Yes, we are very excited to have them both on, and all of the people that are interested and excited by the lore at CCP have really, really been doing a stellar job, and I really couldn't ask for anything more than what we've already been getting. That being said, Juliana, so you got something else?
Yeah, I just want to have a quick mention about the scrolling news ticker at the bottom. Apparently, CCP has literally dropped that several times in personal discussions and on Twitter. That there is a lot of significance to that, so keep your eyes peeled on any future videos. There's sometimes like partial sentences that are cut off at the very end of the video that's unique text that's not been previously shown in the Chiron or the scrolling text. So that should be interesting to watch in the future. For example, there's numerous mentionings of Serpentis vessels being captured by the Federation Navy, being brought into Federation testing facilities. I assume that's something to do with the Hecate, which would be very exciting. The rest, of course, is Galante role players. The antagonism between the Serpentis and Galante is ongoing ever since the Evalon bombardment, where Serpentis dreadnoughts bombarded the entire city off the map. So maybe there'll be some light events about that as well.
Wait, you just mentioned and you just dropped a name that I've never heard before.
The star system Evalon, it's a system inside a Placid region. There was a live event where multiple Serpentis capital ships and battleships entered orbit and then tried to ransom the planet from numerous neurochemicals that were locally present in the fauna there, I believe. And the planet refused the demands of the Serpentis organization. The Serpentis came back a day later, then wiped out the entire capital city on the planet's surface. We got somewhat angry about this a couple of years ago and tried to attack the Serpentis, but there was no real live event traction by that point. So hopefully they let us get back into that at some point. So.
Right. Okay, that's very interesting. I also think it's worth noting that if you remember during the live event that led to Rubicon. So the ghost site, quote unquote, live event where they took high-sec people and they brought them to get slaughtered by people in nullsec. The two pirate organizations that were involved in that, if I remember correctly, were the Garistas and the Serpentis. And we know that the Garistas are going to be important in the lore coming up as we head towards the Valkyrie, but having Serpentis coming up again right beside them does seem to say that they are worth paying attention to as well. So I guess all we need is the Blood Raiders to show up, and we've pretty much got everybody. Mac. I'm just going to call you Mac from now on. Mac, what you got about the Ghost Site stuff?
Mac totally works. Interestingly, the tie-in with ghost sites will probably come around when we've got gates, because they were actually working to generate artificial wormholes. The first explosion, which was detected in Syndicate, evidently looked like an artificial wormhole generation, but I think someone in the Intaki Syndicate said, oh, no, it was totally a natural sort of wormhole detonation thing.
I remember that. You're right. Huh. There's also another wormhole-like detonation that happened a little bit later, which we've noted several times. I'm talking about Caroline Starr, of course. So, and Morwen, you had something else to throw in?
Yeah, just a correction. I'm pretty sure it was Syndicate and Curse, I think, that they went to. The Garistas weren't involved with the actual Rubicon event.
Yeah, it might have been the Angels.
Two different groups. I'm pretty sure it was Angels.
Yeah, it was the Angels.
Serpentis. Or at least, as far as the NPCs were concerned, that the players really were a big thing there because, as we said, leading the lambs to the slaughter.
Right, but I brought it up because the pirates that are involved kind of set the tempo of that. But it's very interesting that it wasn't. I guess I was always under the impression that it was Garistas.
I believe you may be confusing it with the Chronicle that was released. That facility may have been a Garistas one. I do know that, or I could have that one wrong. I know there was a second Chronicle that was released that had to do with a experimental Guristas facility or maybe that was connected with the Mordu's sites, the besieged covert facilities, because there was reference of experimental fighter testing. So it was around when we got the geckos, and it was kind of the first hint that, oh, well, maybe the Valkyrie program is starting to be started up in the background.
Right. Mac, you want to set us straight?
Both confirmation and expansion. So the station in the bazaar is the chronicle that you're referencing. It's a Thucker trader basically saying the Guristas are onto something. They're making the most progress. They're buying out or taking over all of the research facilities. So the implication is that the warp or wormhole technology, at least for the pirates, will be predominantly from the Guristas, even as it's touching on the Valkyrie.
Ugh, there's so many things to pay attention to. Okay, so speaking of Valkyrie, I can't think of a better segue than that. We have some new information about Valkyrie, and they actually came out with a new trailer, which came out for FanFest, which actually involved Katie Sackhoff, who is the voice of Ran. Or Ron, yeah, okay.
Round.
Whatever.
It's like round without a D.
Okay, round. You Icelandic people. All right, so I can't even pronounce English, okay? So, at any rate, she does make an appearance in the trailer. I did have some questions about that, which I brought up in one of the podcasts I was on. And I think that we've gotten some answers about that. Morwen, why don't you talk about that a bit?
Well, it's a question, do we actually want to show off the trailer or not? I'm assuming no at this point.
We're going to let Locke prep that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Locke will let us know when it's ready.
Then the first thing that's listed here, I'll hold off on to, because it's better to show the trailer for that. There's some discussion about like the origin of the Valkyrie cloning technology, which at this point, it's noted, it's a hybrid of capsuleer and mercenary or dust soldier technology, according to the art book, which I do have open. And the only quote that they have about the cloning procedure for the Valkyries right now is a painful rebirth. Built upon stolen technology, the pirates' cloning procedure is not quite as refined as that of their military counterparts. Imprinted pilots are housed in vat rooms retrofitted into carriers. Reconstructed from data files, they are subjected to a painful rebirth, an imperfect process that often leaves lapses in memory or character.
That's interesting, because that's very similar to the way that they've described dust soldiers
Yes.
and their rebirth, which, as we all know, are based off of sleeper technology.
Correct. And
Okay.
we do know that the Guristas actually have yoinked this very same technology for themselves. According to Falcon, there was a live event, or at least a news article sometime back, where the Guristas basically yoinked a bunch of mercenaries off of a planet and evac'd them away, and nobody did anything about it.
There was an event actually, and people did try to form up, but
but nobody actually managed to stop them.
No,
So-
we failed. We sucked
All
so
right.
bad.
Yeah.
There's
All right.
there's an interesting piece in Eve's source too. There's just a one pager that they don't really go into very much detail on. That's called Dark Horizons, and it talks a little bit about that, and that it actually says for the last few months, capsuleer trainees from all over New Eden have been dropping out of their programs in ever increasing numbers and disappearing off the radar completely, often stealing highly specialized equipment in the process. So it's going to be really interesting to see where they take that and say, all right, you've got these disappearing capsuleers, you've got some of these things going on with the Guristas as well, and how are they going to tie that together?
So there's a lot of stuff with these Guristas, but it's staying fairly under the radar at the moment. So actually, I'm going to pause this conversation and throw it over to Locke, who's going to play the Valkyrie trailer that we were just referencing.
Welcome, pilot. Begin systems check. Navigation systems online. Rockets online. Engines online. Magnetic catapult initialized.
Hold on tight. We're ready to deploy.
Launching in 3, 2, 1.
Listen up. This is Lieutenant Kavik. Escort missions are pretty routine, so let's use the time wisely and brush up on your flight skills. Activate boosters and group at the waypoint.
Estimate 3 Tower, this is Convoy Hawk 6 Heavy. Do you copy? Estimate 3 Tower, this is Convoy Hawk 6 Heavy. Do you read?
Where are you going, pilot?
No response from Estimate 3 Tower. Hold bearing and continue approach pattern.
I don't like this. Something's up. Stay close. Kavik to all fighters. Align on Vector 39er. You've got multiple hostiles inbound. Form up on me and prepare to defend the carriers. If we lose them, we're stuck out here. Check your 6. Good kill. We're taking heavy losses here. Now hold them off. You head for our last carrier. See you in the next life.
Man, God, I love that trailer. I ain't gonna lie. All right, so that was the Valkyrie trailer that I was referencing, and as you could, the voice that you heard was in fact Katie Sackhoff, who is confirmed to be the voice of Ron Round. And other than that, I'm actually just going to hand this over to Fi because Valkyrie is Fi's thing, and you were at FanFest, so go ahead and talk.
So just some quick things to note about that video. You start out and you get that fly safe warning when you leave the tube, and that's just a really nice touch. But as soon as you come out, you're in this Galente battle. Your wingmates are in Cyclops fighter bombers, which is the Galente fighter bomber, but your cockpit is a Wraith, which is this new fighter that's being developed by the Guristas. And other than, we all thought that was a mistake or they didn't have the time to develop a Cyclops cockpit. Apparently that was intentional, and we'll get some more information on that. You fly around in this Galente fleet, ostensibly to escort them. You get hot dropped by an Amar fleet, and all hell breaks loose. And then you die, and after you die, Katie Sackhoff, or I'm sorry, Round Kavik, who at this point, during that actual mission, was not a Valkyrie, did not have the cloning tech. As soon as your eyes go black, she says, "See you in the next life," which is interesting to say the least. So my fellow panelists have some more tinfoil on that if we want to talk about that.
It is worth noting that I did present this question to CCP Fozzie, and while he did not, strictly speaking, confirm that, or to come straight out and say it in so many words, he did verify that the person that you're hearing is in fact Round. I commented that she did not use that name in the video, and he pointed out that what she used was her last name, which would be correct if she was a military person. She would refer to herself by her last name in that case. And so now we know her full name. And again, he didn't directly say it, but there was the strong implication that what we witnessed is something that either has happened or will happen canonically within the lore. So, there may be a slip up here or there, like that final "see in the next life" might have been just a little nod or something like that. But this idea of the attack between the MR and the Glente with Kavik there likely is in fact a real event, and we'll know more information once we get her full story revealed. However, again, I have Morwen about to bite my head off because I'm not letting him talk. So go for it, Morwen.
More than Fi is stealing my thunder here. We actually, the funny thing with the trailer is that, yes, if you notice, you're flying a Wraith, not a Cyclops like all the rest of your wingmen. But at first, the Valkyrie team told us it was just that they didn't have time to model a separate cockpit. But then some chatter with Fozzie and Falcon on Slack implied the tutorial mission string, which is where the trailer comes from. It's from one of the missions in the tutorial string that teaches you how to fly the game, which is that part will be single player. That it might actually be being used as training material for the Valkyrie pilots. So what you're seeing is, if that's the case, what you're looking at is a mission that Round flew in. You're just not flying from her perspective. She's there, but you're learning to fly under her and all that. The other thought, as for why they might be using the Wraith model intentionally, well, if you're trying to get your pilots acquainted with a particular ship, it really helps to have them fly that instead of something else. So having them fly a Cyclops would not be great for training purposes when they're going to be flying Wraiths or Spectres or whatever the third ship that wasn't available yet, but is hinted at in the art book is going to be.
Very cool. And Mac, you have a theory, right?
So,
oh wait, no, I guess that was already addressed, but you got a different theory?
A slight elaboration on Morlag's theory, which is quite solid. So all Capsuleers, and in fact also clone soldiers, how they develop skills is by burning memory engrams. So what if you're reliving essentially a falsified engram? So all new Valkyrie pilots have a bunch of skills burnt into their brain as they're being awoken first time as a clone, and every pilot relives this specific mission not because it's a simulator, but because they have a forced or falsified memory.
I heard dissension.
For another time.
Okay. Also, there was a bit of information about the origin of the... Oh, never mind. Morwen already went over the origin of the Valkyrie cloning tech.
And
I guess you're right.
Uriel is sounding really sad here in chat that Spectre and Wraith were formerly the names of Jove ships that got removed from the database.
He's open for the Eidolon still.
At the same time, all of the Valkyrie ships are evidently going to be named in ghost sorts of themes, so...
Yes, that's a big thing.
Just like the Jove ships were.
Well, they also, when they released the art for Round without her helmet on, they made it very clear that what they wanted was she needed to look Wraith-like she was kind of half dead, like not really fully there. And believe me, they did a real good job with it.
That's a great picture.
It's a wonderful painting.
I would definitely get that thing framed.
Unfortunately, at this time, we don't have a ton of actual, really solid Valkyrie information, but we do know that there is a lot of stuff coming out, including a comic book. So we anxiously await that, so that way we can all analyze it. But what that means is that we are actually going to get to theory time with enough time to actually discuss theories, which is awesome.
You're so optimistic, Ash.
I know, but I mean, we're more on schedule than we've been in the previous. All right, so I'm just gonna we've asked all of our panelists to kind of throw together different theories and whatnot, and I'm just gonna start going through these, and we're gonna pound through them as much as we can, and we'll see where we get to. So, and some of these may have already been discussed, and if they have, just say so, and we'll move on to the next one. So the first one would be the Antikythera personal theory by Mac.
Actually, I thought it was first Drifter theory.
I think
You're right. I missed that.
I mean, well,
No,
Mac could go first. I mean, it kind of maybe it'll tie in a little better like that. I don't know.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay, so it goes. All right, so the main thing to note is that with the Antikythera elements, as mentioned earlier, they're connected to something larger because they're still resonating with energy, uses infomorph psych to operate the thing, and it uses sleeper encryption to do research and to develop the tech too. The implications here, if you follow it on a sleeper angle as opposed to assuming that sleeper and Jove tech is similar enough that we're just using sleeper as a placeholder, is that Entosis links are using some sort of sleeper element to corrupt structures. So here's where things get crazy. What if we're using access to the sleeper construct in some way to corrupt structures, either by encouraging another or a sleeper infomorph into a structure to corrupt its control mechanisms, or else using sleeper schema to allow capsuleer infomorphs to integrate themselves into structures and disrupt the control structures themselves.
So hold on. What you're suggesting is that the structures have systems on board that control it, obviously, and that in the same way that the sleepers are basically both physical beings and virtual beings, and in the case of the others, only virtual beings, we're literally injecting these consciousnesses into the electronics in order to take it over from within.
Essentially, and that actually ties with the entosis element of a cell injecting itself into another for some unknown purpose, and who knows what will result. You know, we're essentially just wreaking havoc and then using that havoc to take control of the structure.
That is very interesting. It also that causes me to think more about the whole like others versus sleepers and all that stuff. And it is very interesting that the big focus behind the circadian sleepers and the drifters is this new AI that CCP have been working on. And in essence, the other would be an AI. I don't know, just something I thought about.
Indeed. And also it's interesting that the Amar are the first off the gate with Antikythera element research, considering that Jamil Suram has another inner brain, essentially, attempting to free others and to bring them out into the cluster.
Oh, that gives me the creeps.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Uriel, do you have a more lighthearted theory? Probably not.
What, for the Entosis things?
No, the drifter. Your drifter theory.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, if I can say about the Entosis thing, just something real
go
quick
for it.
though. So I think that thing about the others possibly being inserted into things to help take them over, I think that's totally possible. But I kind of think that the ones we'd use, seeing as it seems like we're reverse engineering them, that it wouldn't be ours that would have that. It would probably, if anything, be just the Seekers and Drifters that would use them.
Okay, and actually, Anselo, do you want to chime in on something, or did you want to present your own theory?
I mean, I guess the only thing I would say is, like, I don't think it's necessarily going to be sending our infomorphs into, specific structures or whatever. I think it's like, I don't fully understand the process of Entosis, but it's not my exact expertise. I'm more parasitology, microbiology, infectious diseases, but Entosis, as I understand it, it's putting just part of an organism's cell, just like one little breakaway into another cell. So I don't see that as like consciousness, maybe more as like a suggestion or maybe like a command, just some kind of fancy hacking module that has more to do with infomorphs and biology and neurology versus throwing your entire soul into a machine to take control of it.
It's probably more a metaphorical imposing your will on the structure than it is actually transferring your consciousness.
Yeah, more or less. That's what I thought that too for a while.
I do find it interesting having effectively a computer virus that is a fully rendered artificial intelligence.
Well, and we know that the infomorph psychology skill that the Entosis links are going to require is more about your mental fortitude than it actually is specifically about the transfer of consciousness. It's basically just a skill that helps with that transfer of consciousness. So the will imposition is really probably the way that they're going with it.
All right. And then, so next, Anslo, you have recently made the news with your theory about drifter physiology.
Crap.
Haha.
Well, I'm going to say this right off the bat. It wasn't just me. It was multiple people. I wouldn't have been able to put it together without them. So, Mizir, Kybernetis Moros, and Calo Askold, all of them came together to help me because all of us have a background in biology or engineering in some way, shape, or form, and that's how we were able to do it. But basically, I came up with this crazy idea about, oh hey, well, CCP normally doesn't just design something this big with, aesthetics in mind, like, oh hey, this implant over here would look really cool, let's go ahead and put it into the head. No, they put it there for a specific reason. And so going off of that, I was like, okay, I have this nifty little application over at the NIH. What happens if I go Mondo nerd and take a drifter head and use it to overlay on a standard human skull and with brain and all? And found some pretty interesting stuff, namely that a lot of the implants or absolute replacements of the brain in a drifter correlated with things like visual, like different sensory perception, visuals, perception of area, sound, perception of people, empathy, self, all those kinds of things. Also, how consciousness is processed, how these sensors are processed, or how the sensor input is processed, and possibly, for all we know, how pod sensory is, or how pod feedback or sensory feedback is processed. I can speak English, I'm sorry. And the reason I even mentioned the pod part in the first place is that if you look at a drifter model in game, if you turn it around towards the spine, you will see that there, I can't remember, I think it's like 4 sockets, 5 sockets or something like that. Those somewhat correlate with, guessed it, pod pylon ones. So like if you take a shirt off of your character in game, you'll see they have spinal implants more or less in the same area. I think it's vertebrae 4, 7, 12. I forget. I have to double check. It's in the report that I made and with the others. But what's interesting to note is that the sockets for what may or may not be a pod are located on an exosuit. The exosuit itself is really interesting and needs more research, but it seems like it almost allows these drifters who are using sleeper bodies to be able to pilot their drifter battleships through a pod, maybe. We don't know. We have no confirmation. While maintaining the integrity of their standard sleeper implants to preserve an infomorph, to preserve some kind of function so another infomorph could come in. I mean, without going into too many details, personally, and what others think that were involved in this report, is that the way that these implants were taken, placed, and when you compare the final drifter product to the, pre-Drifter product, like you saw in the initial trailer, where they were missing implants, they had little holes in them, sockets. They were not the same being. But the predominant theory is that certain spots, certain parts of the brain were replaced so that this body could host an infomorph or an entity that is not used to, one, physical sensory inputs such as visual perception, smell, taste, talking, something that isn't used to those things or has never experienced those things or forgot how to use those things. That's one. And two, to be able to comprehend, understand, and process this sensory feedback in tandem with what a possible pod or pod-esque like whatever system would give you, like your camera drones, like the senses that have been described in past lore or chronicles about how pod pilots will feel impacts of the ship as if, a bullet was hitting them, right in the face or something like that. So while everyone's looking at the ships and everyone's looking at, the outposts and Carolyn Star and everything like that, I looked at the Drifters because this was the only thing that I could really buckle down with and think, maybe the answers we need are here. Everything else was just, it was beyond my expertise. I didn't know what was going on. Everyone was tinfoiling beyond the bounds, beyond the bounds of what was comfortable for me. So when I saw the Drifters, I saw these implants, I saw where they were placed, I was like, maybe if we go down this road, we can find something. And we might have found something, and it might be a lot creepier than what we thought it would ever be.
All y'all and your scary theories. Okay, thank you for that. And it is an amazing report, very professionally done, by the way.
Thanks.
Uriel, you had a tyrant's theory.
The Drifters, bodiless minds that were inserted into infomorphs. Whether or not they were others or sleepers, we don't know, but we know that they are put into these bodies. The bodies are made from cybernetic implants and Jove biomass. Kind of a leaked confirm, I guess, because on one of the artist's pages, one of the guys that had the Drifter concept art, that they were made from Jove body parts, and that was soon taken down after I said something about it in the lore channel. In their description, they are said to inherit the legacy of some of the most ancient Jove, and are ruthless in their efforts, and appear to come from Anoikos. Their only corporation is called the Vigilant Tyrannos, which, if you translate it, at least in one way, can mean watchful tyrants. The CEO of the corporation is called Tyrannos Strategos, who has an unpublished description that kind of implies that she isn't exactly the head of the Drifters. Additionally, Strategos was the title of generals in the ancient Greek army. The others, all mentioned in Templar 1, were intelligences that manifested in the sleeper construct seemingly out of nowhere. They caused chaos within the virtual reality by preaching that the construct was, in fact, artificial. So that indicates that the sleepers in the construct don't know what's actually virtual reality. And they appear to be vehemently opposed to the Enhedwani. Next on to the Other, which was the first Other to appear in the construct, before all the rest of them started appearing. It is seen as, the ringleader of the rest of the Others, and it invaded Jamil Sorum's clone during her transfer back after the succession trials, where it started to put its plans into action. It obviously knows quite a bit, as it revealed the location of Jove-hidden Terran artifacts near the Eve Gate, leading to the development of the superweapon, and it encouraged the harvesting of sleeper implants, before failing because of Grius's warning to Marcus Dror, who was soon killed by the Other. It is extremely intelligent. Well, actually, it's called He in the books and in the Chronicles, which is very interesting, and appears to have at least a pretty deep understanding of politics. Next on to the Tyrants. The Tyrants were the leading party in the Second Jove Empire. They united the Jove and basically eliminated those who opposed them. Under Miko Bor, they implemented a federal system, and they created a prosperous and effective republic until the Jovian disease. And then Miko Bor, the ambitious and charismatic first tyrant, in a more classical sense, don't think of that as like a dictator, is very different. He took power after the collapse of the First Empire and quickly gained support. He united the scattered Jove, who were, for the most part, eager to join, and from there on, the Empire started. We have no idea what happened to him. We don't get any mention, but he has been mentioned for quite a time, actually. He was mentioned way before Eve's source. He's been on the page for the Jove on the community website for a long time, which is interesting. My main theory on this right now, mind you, this could be completely wrong. I have very little absolute confidence in this, but it's what I'm working with now and I think could be a possibility. So, hey, tinfoil. Okay. So the theory goes, Miko Bor, who, wasn't immortal after all, would have entered the sleeper construct at some time during the Second Jove Empire, because many, the sleepers and the Jove lived together. The sleepers were, at that point, also Jove, and many Jove joined them at different times. As the first tyrant and the leader and ambitious guy in charge of the Second Empire, probably wouldn't have wanted to be subject to the Enhedwanu's one mind, one body law in the construct, which would mean it implies that when the body of some sleeper or Jove dies in the real world, they would get rid of the mind, because they have to have a body to return to. So the idea is that perhaps he was able to hide away within the construct after his body death because of help from supporters, which, you can think of the leader of an entire empire. He might have had a little bit of support in a few different places that would have been able to help him with that. Now, after this, the Second Empire ends up collapsing because of the disease, and many Jove start to join the sleeper construct too, including many tyrants. Now, the idea would be the tyrants would, in addition to Bor, have ended up, preserving minds of other sleepers and tyrants who ended up dying within it, taking them with them and keeping them from disappearing altogether. So the idea is they would have stayed like this for a long time, completely hidden, mind you, for a long time, up until when they revealed themselves, like when we hear in Templar 1 with Grius telling us about them coming back. And at that point, no one knows what they are. And honestly, this is where, at that point, it kind of is a part where it kind of falls apart a little, but again, it's a theory. And back to this, though. The first other takes over Jamil Storm's mind, broadcasting to her somehow, and begins to start its own plans. It knows what the, regardless of whether it is Miko Bor or not, knows that the Jove have hidden Terran stuff all over the place and shows them the super weapon, gets them the super weapon, and after all of that, the next thing that happens is it's starting to, quote-unquote, build its own army by destroying sleeper implants, which is interesting, because at first you'd think that it would be the dust soldiers that would have ended up being its army, but if they were in fact taking sleeper minds and saving them after their bodies died, it could also be that they were creating more of their army within the construct even. So now, once that fails, it may have already, come into having a lot more of a large army, having more forces, and this obviously would have waited a while. But then we have Caroline's Star, we have the collection of the body parts by the fake Healan Tukos, which I would have taken to mean the drifters were collecting biomass to make their bodies with. The Seekers come out, and basically we're led to what we have today, with the other in Jamil Storm's head basically being in charge of everything, regardless of whether or not it is Miko Bor, which I am not totally sure of.
Right.
And so just a one-sentence thing. I'm very certain there's a direct link to from the drifters to the tyrants. I am also certain that the drifters are indeed the others, and I am not sure at all about Miko Bor, but it is a possibility. So there you go.
Thank you very much. Whew. All right.
Mouthful. Sorry.
Let's see. I need Locke, if you can confirm in chat whether or not we have time for maybe one or two more theories. In the meantime, Ravis, why don't you go ahead and
actually let's throw the ball to Tarek on this one quick first.
Okay, and we've actually been told that we are at time, so go ahead and Tarek, go ahead and throw out your theory, and then we will wrap it up and be out.
All right, fine. That actually ties in quite well, and there's a reason why Ravas threw me that, I guess, because we are very much on the same line on this. Contrary to what Uriel would say, and I want to point out that I like Uriel's theory. It is a good theory. It has a lot of tie-ins with the lore, but there is one flaw that I perceive in it, and I think Ravas would agree. Okay, so why, if the tyrants insinuate their minds into the construct, stay there for centuries, why would they wait? Why would they not take over at the point where, and that is where the conflict between Enheduani and other Jove actually happens, is after the age of the tyrants, in the gestation of the Third Empire, the Jovian disease, and the Enheduani say, like, we have to go out there, we have to engage with the rest of humanity and, in their mind, elevate them, whereas the rest of the Jovians, the Directorate, say, like, no, that's not what we're going to do. That would have been the perfect moment for the tyrants to seize power. But why would they wait for the architects to drag them out into Anoikis, all the way, far away from the empires, to just then return and try to conceive of some complicated, convoluted scheme to take over Jamil Sarum, free all the others, and so on and so forth. That's where the theory becomes difficult, and where the other theory, makes its appearance, namely that yes, there was an emergent intelligence that came out of the sleeper construct, and it violated the law, and the sleepers could not accept it. That intelligence lived in a society that could not accept it, and it craved for bodies. It wanted to be manifest. It wanted to be part of that society, at the same time defending itself and emulating the tyrants who would have been preserved in the sleeper data banks as historical legacy of the Jove. And at that point, Ravas can take over.
There's not a whole lot that I'll add to that. I think that I come at the same conclusion, just from a different direction. To me, I look at it and I see that certainly the Tyrannos and Tyrants link is a pretty obvious one that seems to be straightforward, and I think that it would be that the main reason that it triggers for me that I think it's inspired by the Tyrants as opposed to actually the Tyrants is because I think we're still missing a lot of information. I think that the Drifters have become a very big target for lore buffs to watch, and they're the shiny object, but we're still missing a lot of components about what happened with Sancha, what happened with the Sisters of Eve, what happened with the Thooker, and what are we missing that someone is potentially taking on the mantle in the name of the Tyrants, in the name of bringing back the Second Jove Empire, without necessarily literally being the Second Jove Empire.
Yeah, and I will say that I think that the Sancha still, my personal piece in this is that the Sancha were part of this because it was still part of that search. So the Sancha was out getting bodies and doing stuff during the Sancha live events, and it's very possible that the Sancha Empire was being used and kind of succumbed to the other and was being used to kind of populate their bodies. But it's very possible that just normal humans like the Sancha were kidnapping were very low rate of compatibility. And so, of course, they would go to Jove, which is what their base matrix is, and then eventually to Capsuleers, because we are also manipulated biologically in order to allow for more sophisticated implants. Unfortunately, at this point, I'm going to have to say that probably about wraps it up. I have one more thing. Uriel, you can go ahead and say your piece, and then we will jump gate and get out.
All right. Really, really quick point. With my thing, with that hole in it, I guess I'd only be able to say maybe they were building up their force for all that time with the way I was, saying collecting, saving consciousnesses, and in the end, I have no idea what's going on. This is just what I've built up after all this time reading Eve's Source and Templar 1 and everything. I love this stuff. I love thinking about it. And if I'm totally wrong, I don't mind at all, because I just love what CCP is doing with this, and I'm really excited to see where they go from here on out.
As are we all. Well, thank you for that sentiment. And I think that about wraps it up, guys. So we didn't actually get to everything. We still have a couple of theories that we wanted to address. There are some more topics that, of course, we can dig into some more. So we are going to have another lore panel soon. The reason why it was so long in between lore panels is, of course, we had FanFest and other stuff. And with the clip that things are kind of evolving, I can expect that we will have plenty to talk about sooner rather than later. So please pay attention to our Twitter, which is at Hydrostatic Eve, where we will, of course, announce any future lore panels. I would like to personally thank all of the panelists for coming and contributing. You were all did a fantastic job. And also, of course, if you like the lore, please listen to Hydrostatic Podcast, which is part of the Hydrostatic Eve network, where Phi does a Know Your Lore segment every episode, which kind of breaks down the history of someone or something within the Eve universe. We also are working with our panelists now to continue to have more lore information available for people. So if you have your lore questions, please feed them to @HydrostaticEve on Twitter, or of course to any of our panelists. And IKAME is recruiting. And also, let's see, anything else I need to address? Quick, we'll just go down the row. Actually, I'm just going to go down the line and ask for shout-outs. Phi?
I am not going to steal time for shout-outs.
Julianus?
I just want to say hello to my wonderful faction worker dudes and Hammer Midley.
Adre?
I have a shout out to Archon Serene for helping a bunch of us with out of character RP channels recently.
Very cool. Tarek?
I give my shout out to Anslow for his incredible analysis of the implant.
Here.
Amazing.
It was pretty cool.
Fantastic.
Ravis?
Just a quick set of shout-outs. If you haven't seen my latest post, it's on the shattered wormholes that we've been exploring. We've hit 61 of the 101 so far, and since I made that post, we had 5 new submissions from Sar Hassaran, Lyndon Byrne, Farron Marr, Saf Suzy, and of course Xeric Straverus, who's really been heading it up.
Mac?
So actually shout out to CCP, Affinity, Falcon, and Delegate Zero, and also Fonzie for all of the lore-centered goodness that we've been diving into so much for these past few months.
Absolutely. Uriel?
Shout out for first my core Jovian Labs and all the guys there who are with me and love discussing this stuff. Then shout out to really everyone in the lore channel on Tweet Fleet. Also, please join that. We have a lot of great discussion there, and that's really where most of our things here come from. So yeah, and thank you so much to the lore team at CCP, and yeah, I love all this.
That actually does remind me, if you also have any questions or you just want to start talking about the lore in real time with other people, you can always join the Tweet Fleet Slack. We have a lore channel where all of us are in it, and boy howdy does it get tinfoiled in there. All right, Mark?
Shout out to my fellow lore panelists as well as the CCP lore team. I also wanted to just throw a quick shout out to let everyone know that I have updated the Eve Lore Survival Guide. It is updated through the release of Scylla, so I've been keeping it up to date on the recent happenings.
Yep, and to answer the question that we get asked a lot, I am interested in the lore, but I don't know anything about it. How do I learn about it? The answer is go to Mark726 website, which is
evetravel.wordpress.com,
and pick up the Lore Survival Guide. It is amazing. Anslow.
Shout out to Kybernetus Moros, Mizir, and Kala Askold for helping me put together the report. Shout out to everybody who donated Jovian body parts, despite AJ saying, "Hey, no, don't do it," and that includes the Antiquarian, Avio Yakin / Foley Jones. Big shout out to you guys. Shout out to Scopeworks as usual for supporting me in all of this, and shout out to Say Scopeworks and Overload. Everything is recruiting.
All right, and Morwin.
Well, I want to give a quick shout out to the other SayCon 4 organizers, Jennifer Starfall, Namara Makari, and Ollie Rundle. SayCon 4 was a huge hit this year, and looking forward to doing it next year. Also to all of you guys who are getting into the lore and roleplay as a result of these things, this is why we do it. So, yeah, keep it coming. We will be doing our best to keep these going as long as you guys are wanting them.
Thank you to all of our panelists for coming here. You've done an amazing job once again. Thank you, Lockfox, for being an amazing camera guy. Thank you, Fyridian, for helping put everything together. And thank you to all of you who came to listen live, who support us in our YouTube channel. We did hit our goals and all that stuff from last time. It's an amazing experience. We hope to continue it. And, you know, we'll see you again soon. So on that note, on behalf of Lockfox, Fyridian, myself, and our entire panel, thank you for tuning in to Hydrostatic's Lore Panel Entosis Edition, and kill them before they kill you.